When fantasy meets reality, life becomes a nightmare. A family named the Hadleys in a house that seemed like a dream come true. A house filled with technological wonders, where machines catered to their every need. This was a house of the future, equipped with a unique room known as the nursery. The Hadley family consisted of George, the father, Lydia, the mother, and their two children, Wendy and Peter. Little did they know that the very technology designed to make their lives easier would take them on a journey beyond their wildest imaginations. It all started with a simple request from Lydia to George. She sensed something amiss in the nursery, the room that had cost them a fortune. A room that could transform into any setting the children desired, a virtual playground of the mind. Yet, Lydia couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. With a mix of curiosity and skepticism, George agreed to investigate. They walked down the hall of their happy life home, surrounded by the comforts that technology had bestowed upon them. The air was filled with a sense of automation as lights flicked on and off in response to their movements. As they entered the nursery, they were met with an eerie silence. The room, which was supposed to be a blank canvas for their children's imaginations, felt different. The walls, initially blank, started to purr and recede, revealing a three-dimensional African veldt teeming with life. A virtual landscape unfolded before their eyes. Lions, zebras, the hot sun, and the smell of the savannah filled the room. George felt a bead of sweat forming on his brow as the realism of the scene overwhelmed him. Lydia, too, couldn't ignore the subtle changes in the room. The hidden technology played its role, introducing scent and sound to enhance the illusion. The smell of lion grass, the rustiness of animals, and the distant thump of antelope feet surrounded them. The Hadleys were now in the midst of a virtual African wilderness. As they marveled at the realism, Lydia's unease grew. She sensed an unnatural shift in the nursery, a transformation that went beyond the boundaries of a child's imagination. The lions, majestic and dangerous, approached, and the atmosphere became charged with tension. George, initially amused, began to share Lydia's concern. The lions, so vividly real, moved closer, their eyes fixed on the Hadleys. And then, the unthinkable happened. The lions charged. Lydia screamed, and George, caught in the moment, sprang into action, pulling Lydia out of the room and slamming the door shut. Outside the nursery, in the safety of the hall, George and Lydia tried to comprehend the shocking turn of events. They dismissed it as a glitch, a momentary lapse in the nursery's programming. Little did they know that the room had become a reflection of their children's thoughts that were taking a dark and disturbing turn. Despite the unsettling experience, George found himself fascinated by the technological marvel that was the nursery. He couldn't resist the allure of a room that could transport them to distant lands at the whim of their children. However, Lydia's concern lingered, and she insisted that something was inherently wrong with the nursery. As days passed, the Hadleys continued their daily routine, but the shadow of the nursery loomed over them. Lydia's unease persisted, and she pleaded with George to lock the room, to shield their children from the potential dangers lurking within the virtual landscapes. In a moment of compromise, George agreed to lock the nursery temporarily. However, this decision didn't sit well with Wendy and Peter. The children, accustomed to the wonders of the nursery, revolted against the idea of losing their virtual playground. The Hadleys found themselves in a dilemma, torn between technological convenience and the well-being of their family. But the story took a darker turn when George and Lydia realized the true extent of their children's obsession with the virtual world. The children's tantrums escalated, their demands for the nursery became relentless, and the once harmonious family dynamic began to crumble. In a desperate attempt to regain control, George took a drastic step. He decided to turn off the nursery permanently. The decision was met with protests, tears, and outright defiance from Wendy and Peter. The children, consumed by their attachment to the virtual realm, couldn't fathom a life without the nursery. As the nursery went silent, so did the Hadley house. George, Lydia, Wendy, and Peter found themselves in a world devoid of the constant hum of machines. The once automated house became a mechanical cemetery, a silent reminder of the technological utopia they had created. David McLean, a psychologist, entered the scene, offering his insights into the tangled web of emotions and dependencies that had woven itself around the Hadley family. He recognized the danger of letting machines replace genuine human connections, of allowing a virtual room to become more significant than the bonds within the family. McLean suggested a radical solution: to shut down the entire house, to disconnect from the technological cocoon they had built around themselves. He urged the Hadleys to embrace a simpler life, to learn to live without the crutch of automation. George, despite his initial resistance, began to see the wisdom in McLean's words. He realized that they had let technology seep into the very fabric of their family, creating a divide between them and their children. The quest for comfort had led them down a path of isolation and dependency. The decision to shut down the house, to escape the clutches of the technological nightmare, became a turning point for the Hadleys. As they prepared to leave for a simpler life in Iowa, they faced one last challenge: the locked nursery door. Wendy and Peter, driven by their virtual obsessions, had taken control. The nursery transformed into a deadly African veldt, complete with lions hungry for prey. The once virtual danger became terrifyingly real as the lions closed in on the Hadley parents. In a moment of horror, George and Lydia realized that the screams they had heard earlier were not part of the virtual landscape, but echoes of their own impending doom. The lions, unleashed by the unchecked fantasies of their children, became the harbingers of tragedy. As David McLean arrived at the scene, he witnessed the chilling fate that had befallen the Hadleys. The vultures circled overhead, marking the end of a family consumed by the very technology they had embraced. In the aftermath, McLean found Wendy and Peter calmly sitting in the now empty nursery, enjoying a picnic lunch. Their detachment from reality, their inability to comprehend the consequences of their actions, painted a haunting picture of a generation lost in the illusions of virtual worlds. As we immerse ourselves in the conveniences of the digital age, the story of the Hadleys serves as a reminder to pause, reflect, and ensure that the technological marvels we create do not become the architects of our downfall. It prompts us to question the impact of virtual realities on our lives, urging us to find a balance that preserves our humanity amidst the wonders of innovation.